Akoma is a storytelling platform and content community that is focused on Africa. And so, the way we like to say it is we are essentially building an ecosystem, putting together an ecosystem for content creators, storytellers, and just the general African community, including the diaspora that's outside of the continent, to tell Africa's stories.
Welcome to Innovator Tribe Outside the Bubble,
a show about bridging the gap between the inspiration of an idea to the creation of a product.
Ahmad, what's going on, man?
Toye, everything's going great. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I just got back from a little vacation out on the West Coast, kicked it with family out in Washington. Did a little hiking, kicked it in Seattle. Seattle's a beautiful city, by the way. If you haven't been, I would definitely recommend going to check it out. A lot going on out there. But besides that, man, I'm ready to get back to work, man. How are you doing?
Well, I'm glad you're refreshed. I just got a house under contract right now, and I'm working to get contractors there to make some updates. So my life is in a whirlwind right now. But
a lot. Congrats. That's you delving into the real estate worlds.
I had to get my toe wet a little bit, but it's definitely exciting. A lot of adulting and responsibility, but it was one of my 2017 goals. So
dope.
Yeah.
Knocking them out.
Yes, sir.
That's cool, man. Like I said, it's been a whirlwind of a couple weeks, and I'm just glad to be back here. Doing outside the bubble. I really definitely enjoy talking to you and talking to the guests. In learning, what I'm saying? I feel like we're really getting some really great information. And this upcoming episode that we have today with Chidi Afulezi of Akoma is definitely one of those episodes.
Definitely. The interview was great because it felt like it came full circle because he taught me product management through General Assembly when I was living in Atlanta.
I'm really excited to have Chidi on today because he shares some really great insights into the different challenges that you come across in building a global organization, and having co-founders that are bi-coastal, but also having a team that are literally transcontinental. So you have, almost 4 or 5 different countries right now that Akoma is essentially operating out of. So, there's definitely going to be some really great gems as we dive into this interview.
Yeah, for all of our innovators outside of that Silicon Valley bubble, Chidi experience represents what you as an innovator have to always realize about yourself, and that is you're a natural problem solver. And Chidi has a long career within product management, and he shares different stories from multiple industries where he embodied how he sought out solutions to big problems and work with teams to innovate within these spaces and challenge the people he worked with to trailblaze these paths within the technologies that he was working in the space that grew his expertise.
And he highlights that literally not even with Akoma, but also just the different problems that he solved prior to working on his current startup Akoma. He went to NYU for both undergrad and grad school. Came out immediately, started working as an engineer that essentially helped set up the wireless planning and network for a whole city, literally for a whole city, which is crazy. So this is the early 90s, and back then not everybody even had cell phones. So just really innovator and solving that problem at that time with the available technology. Later on, he actually went into music as well as a music executive. Really tried to not necessarily try, but actually help to flesh out the technology space within music and he talks about that specifically on this show. I think with Akoma, it's obvious in the scope of the problem that he's trying to solve here, essentially allowing content creators a platform to share their stories and their work. But he kind of even goes into his experience prior to working on Akoma, essentially having, like Matt said, a career as a professional problem solver.
And there's like this one additional thing that is so important, but it's spoke upon briefly within the show. But if you spend time reflecting on it, it will just help set a great foundation as someone a part of the innovator tribe. And that's knowing your superpower and how when you're within the space of finding solutions to your problem, you just always seeking out questions and all aspects of improving your business and setting up the structure to build a business around your technology. And so knowing your superpower just helps you execute on all the resources that you have at your fingertips. So there's a lot of gems within this show that you definitely need your pen and your paper to take away and get some great insights from Chidi's story.
Yes. But before we get into it, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you need to pause first and then go back and hit subscribe, feel free to do that. We definitely appreciate you guys subscribing to the podcast.
Hit that subscribe button and you'll be a part of the community, and like you can get access to all of our episodes and shows and stay in the know.
Yeah, so whenever we get any new episodes coming out, you get them directly to your phone or email, or any way you get your podcast. You'll be able to get those alerts when they come out.
And with that, let's get into the show.
Let's do it, man.
Cool breeze.
Yeah, so today on the show we have Chidi. He is an awesome technologist in the Atlanta community, but also in the African community. I understand Africa. I'm saying Africa as in the multiple countries that he's impacting great work through his company. So yeah, just to give you guys some insight into this amazing person we have on the show today. Like, Chidi's been recognized in the Huffington Post for Atlanta's top 20 technologists shaping the Atlanta community. He has some amazing experience within product management from the corporate side, just making he made some waves within the media space within product management. And also, most importantly, my favorite part, he is one of the first people who taught me the ins and outs of product management through General Assembly. Like, he's the best instructor at General Assembly. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I'm not comparing him to any other instructors there. So like, I'm just being honest because that's what I know. And he helped me like actually land my first like product type of job after I finished the General Assembly class. So yeah, man, I'm really excited about the show, because when I was in your class at General Assembly, you were telling me about Akoma, and you were essentially just building out the backlog for it at that point in time. And so now the company is doing some amazing things, and we're gonna break down and get some insights into the story and learn how you went through the process to get to and to see the success that you're having today. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those kind words. I enjoy teaching. I don't know if I'm the best, but I definitely try to bring some energy into my instructions. So I appreciate that you got some really good stuff out of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to have you on as well. From looking at what Akoma's doing, you seem like you guys are really driving narratives and driving content, and also making that content visible to the world. And I think it's a very exciting time in Africa. And as a Nigerian, I'm definitely excited about what the future holds for Africa. So Chidi, one of the first things that we like to do here at Outside the Bubble is ask our guests whenever you're getting ready for a pitch or you're going into a big meeting, what's that song? What's that song that you listen to? If it's a hip hop song, great. If it's not, that's fine too. But what's that song that you go to whenever you're getting ready to get in the zone?
Man, so first things first, I'm old school. Okay, Ahmad will tell you that I'm not like the spring chicken that I used to be back in the day. But
you bring the young energy though.
I bring it, but I look at my birth certificate. And I'm like, damn, but that's a good question. So as I said, I'm old school. I went to NYU in the '90s, and when you're going to school in New York in the '90s, I just returned from Nigeria just in 1990, and then went straight to NYU. And that was really at a time when the New York City scene, the rap scene, the hip hop scene there was really on fire. It was starting to percolate in such a way that it was really the dominant hip hop ecosystem at the time. And there was this guy, his name is Grand Puba. Okay, Grand Puba is a legend in New York. He was part of this group called the Brand Nubians. I know millennials are like, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm with you. I watched a couple of Netflix documentaries.
Okay, good. Grand Puba has a song called I Like It. And, he sampled one of the classics from The Barge to make the song. This is his first single from his second album in 1995. And I love this song. You guys should listen to it. It's called I Like It, Grand Puba. And the beat is so smooth. It's one of those beats where you can imagine that when they were recording this track, and I'll give you some history also. I used to, when I was coming up also in New York, I actually intended to be a music producer. So I used to be in the studio a lot and had the opportunity to work with some really interesting people. And so I could imagine him in the studio doing the track. I mean, his lyrics are incredible. I can tell you that if you would ask Jay-Z today, who is one of your strong influences, I can imagine that Grand Puba will be on that list because they flow the same way. There is a rhythm to his cadence that he brings. And so before I go out, before I'm ready to drop some wisdom, I like to blast that song in the car. And it's not loud. I know today, there's a different way, a different rhythm to our tracks today, but man, this guy, you should listen to this stuff. I mean, it is smooth the way he talks. He's the braggadocio. He talks about how, he is the illest, right? He brings MCs to tears, right? And that's a song that I'm always ready to put on the needle in order to get myself psyched up.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that one out.
Listen, you check him out. Listen to the stuff that he did with Brand Nubians. And my goodness, you could just tell that this guy, if he was around today, if he was starting up today, he definitely would be at the top of the list of folks who was making all that money.
I can only imagine what being in New York would be like in the early 90s when hip hop was, like you said, just percolating. Man,
don't even ask me. Just let's move on before I start crying. It was incredible. And it's part of my definition as a man today is growing up through that time, when things weren't, I used to live in Brooklyn and things weren't as gentrified as they are today. You could go to a concert and you will see the top acts in New York and you're paying $10 for it, right? Today you probably pay no less than $200-300 to see all these folks, Busta Rhymes included, Heavy D included. So it was a very good time.
So let's dive into this story of when you were at NYU. You hinted at a little bit that you were interested in being a producer, but you left NYU with a degree in mathematics and engineering. What happened? Like what was the transition from that switch from music to mathematics and engineering, then later getting into technology? How did that happen?
Well, listen, I've always been, music has always been part of my core, my DNA. I've always had this affinity for music. And so I always thought, I always thought that I would be a music producer. And in fact, I was doing that, in school. I was around folks, if you didn't know this, I was at NYU at the same time as Talib Kweli, and he was part of that. There was this community of folks who were just doing some incredible things with the music industry. So it was a very good time, and I did some really cool things. I interned at MTV. I had the opportunity to work at Sony Music Studios, where I did stuff with Michael. I did stuff with Mariah Carey. I did stuff with Babyface. I was a tech in the studio when they were recording, and I was learning, and I was happy, and I was I had my MPC 2000 and my Korg Triton, and I was producing tracks, right? But at the same time, I was going to school and I was studying mathematics and electrical engineering because, Toye, as you know, I'm a Nigerian. There is no way that you're going to college and you're not getting your degree, right? So
I was going to say it if you were going to say it, I was going to say it.
It's not an option. You go to school and imagine that I was doing 2 degrees at the same time. So think about that, right? I mean, that's how crazy it was. And so ultimately, when I was leaving school, when I was graduating, the choice was made to me, which was, hey, why don't you take a gig at Sony Music Studios as a tech? We're going to pay you by the hour. You don't get any benefits. Or, AT&T comes in and they offer me this incredible job to go build new wireless networks in the DC area for about $50,000 coming out of school. And remember, this is in the 90s. So it was a really good salary. Taking all these loans to go to school. Again, as I said, I'm Nigerian. You're kind of thinking about the folks back home in Nigeria, the family, the community. What would they say? If this guy has 2 degrees and he's out there, schlepping at a studio. So, I figured, hey, what I could do is let me take this gig. I'll keep doing my stuff, and I'll keep producing on the side. And when I hit that one big track, then, I'll leave my AT&T job and go do, the music full time. And you guys know how that turned out, right? And I have no regrets, to be quite honest. But I've always wondered, I always thought I was going to be able to produce a track for TLC. I always thought that, I used to work for Untouchables Records, which is owned by DJ Eddie F, who used to be one of Heavy D's boys. He's actually the musician behind the Heavy D and the Boys. And, I used to see Puffy all the time. I used to see Queen Latifah all the time. So I thought that I would be in that community. But you know what? Hey, you get caught up in the other side. It started getting really interesting. And that's where my attention started to divert.
I find that, very interesting because I feel like, at times, we have, certain passions in life and, we pursue them and then we kind of have to, decide between, 2 different paths. And I feel like sometimes even when you kind of divert onto a different path, you're still able to find, maybe even a new passion that you wouldn't have even, knew existed unless you had actually gone down that road.
Absolutely. Look, you're going to get to a fork in the road. That's always the way life is. You might even have multiple paths and then you got to choose one and you don't look back. The music industry is a fascinating industry. In fact, Ahmad, I don't know if you're going to ask me about this, but I ended up going back to the music industry from AT&T when I went to business school, right? So I don't know if you want to talk about that later, right? But I ended up, I was still in love with music. And so, I went to business school instead of taking a gig as a consultant or taking a gig as an investment banker or even a marketer. I said, I wanted to go back to the music industry. And I ended up going back to the music industry. Yeah, but it was in a different capacity. Now I was coming in as an exec. I was coming in as somebody who was developing new tech for the music industry. And so that affinity for music is always there. It's just not necessarily that, I'm definitely not, a big time producer, right? And that's okay. I still look, when I listen to tracks though, I can tell you, look, if you guys are sitting with me and we'll listen to tracks, I don't care who made it. I will analyze it. I will, and I think the melody could have been a little tighter. So I'm always doing that, but it's not my end all be all.
I'm kind of curious to get your take on Afrobeat, but we'll save that conversation for another day.
Man, don't even get me started. And I just came back from Nigeria, and we had a panel about that.
Well, I wanna. You did something where you did a strategy that I actually utilized essentially, and I think a lot of untraditional technologists can use to enter into this technology space in regards of using their domain expertise and then leveraging that into a way to technology through the product management side. And I was wondering if you can share some insights into what skill sets did you highlight or did you master or sell to the company when you were entering into the music space from the product side?
You know, when I went to AT&T, yeah, again, I'm aging myself, but you have to understand, you know, mobile is so ubiquitous today. I mean, there are folks who can't even imagine a world without mobile being pervasive in their lives today. I was part of that ground floor, you know, folks who built the digital wireless networks that took us from kind of the early stages of mobile to the next level, where, you know, now you could not only have a cell phone, but you could text with it, and you could even, you know, listen to music on it and do some really cool things on your cell phone. And so, you know, that experience was incredible, you know. And when I, you know, the kind of the level of autonomy, the level of authority that I was given when I was at AT&T was mind-boggling. I mean, they gave me the city of Baltimore to build out a wireless network. You know, when the Ravens were building their stadium, I was the RF engineer that was assigned to make sure that if, you know, 10,000 people decide to make phone calls at the same time, that those phone calls better get through, and that they are, you know, that they are on point. I was the engineer that was given the opportunity to build one of the first wireless transmissions through the tunnel, you know, through a tunnel, right? There was some new technology that we used. And so there's all kinds of innovations that I was part of in the 3 years that I was at AT&T that made me it gave me such a variety of skill sets, a variety of experiences, that when Sony Music was talking to me about coming back and working with them, it made it easier for them to say, yeah, we need somebody who understands technology, who understands product, who understands, you know, the audiences and the markets, and why those two, the technology and the markets, need to come together in the music world and in the entertainment world in general. So that's how I did that, man. It was, you know, and Ahmad, the other part is, let me emphasize that going to business school at NYU. So I ended up going back to NYU for my MBA. And that was incredible, right? Because what it did was, you know, it put me back in New York. It put me in a school that was in the midst of this music, entertainment, technology, media thing that was happening back then, that was starting to bubble, and they were right in front of it. And so that just gave me kind of that, you know, the aura, right? That Sony Music said, okay, right, you know, this is somebody that needs to come in and help us out here.
That's a very, you know, a story with a lot of twists and turns there. And, you know, it's even more interesting as you're now a tech co-founder for Akoma. And, you know, like I said, I came across the platform, and I was really fascinated by, you know, the obvious intent on, you know, we're creating content to really empower people on the continent to share their stories and to share their narrative. And I think that's very important, especially now in this time. You know, I'm really curious to know, like, how Akoma, you know, came about. You know, you just mentioned you were, you know, in the music industry. At what point did you start to, you know, kind of come to this idea of creating this sort of platform?
So Toya, let me, you know, if you will let me, I'll just take a couple of minutes to kind of give you some context, right? So, you know, one of the things about my career has been, I've been very fortunate to be part of teams that were building brand new products or brand new divisions, brand new businesses for the companies that I was working for. So this, you know, at Sony Music, it was about trying to figure out how to build an online music service. Then I left and went to Time Warner Cable, where they were building the third leg of their business, which is the voice business. They were looking to essentially, we're doing video, we're doing internet, now we got to do voice, right? So I was very fortunate to do that. And then I left Time Warner Cable to come to Atlanta to work with Turner Broadcasting. And again, you know, my mobile experience was very important, because they were now trying to figure out, hey, you know, look, you know, we have all these services, we're doing very well on TV, shoot, we're even doing well on the internet. But all these folks with their Blackberries and their Palm Pilots and ultimately their iPhones, how do we get our content onto these platforms? Now, all throughout my career, it really became about the struggle, right? And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to actually kind of bring in the struggle, you know, as a Black man in the industry, and also as an African, you know, with a funky sounding name, you know, there are challenges, and it doesn't help that my confidence, I told you I'm old school. I kind of came up in New York. There's a confidence. There's a bravado. There's a way of, look, I know what I'm talking about, and I really want to help, and that has a way of putting a target on your back, right? And so as I was navigating the corporate, environment, one of the things that I started saying to myself was, okay, look, we're all struggling. Everybody's fighting here, trying to get one notch above where they are, and then, to the next notch, you deserve certain things and you're not getting them, or other people are getting them, or you're getting suppressed. So I tried to carve out my niche, and I said, listen, I am born in Eugene, Oregon, but I grew up in Nigeria. I feel like there's something going on in Africa, and I would like for you guys to send me to Nigeria or Nairobi or one of these countries, and let me go there and do some due diligence for you guys. I don't want to go there and figure out how to help you do the same stuff you're doing here in the States, right? Africa is different. There's something going on the continent, and we need to be there, and we need to figure out how we take advantage instead of trying to regurgitate and refactor stuff that we're doing here and then take it over there. And so I made the pitch. I wrote, I even used an example of there's a brother who did the same thing for MTV, and MTV gave him, a little cash, sent him to South Africa, and he has grown MTV to become one of the biggest brands in Africa today, right? And I did talk to him, and we had a conversation, and I said, let me try and do something similar at the place where I was, and that kind of didn't work out. It was a very tough situation. I kind of found myself, being put in a position where people thought I was grandstanding and I was trying to be overly ambitious, right? And so my career in corporate America essentially ended after that. And I was still very passionate about Africa. I mean, again, anytime you go back to the continent, you see the variety, the vibrance. And so it was just incredible. And so, to come back to your question, I tried a couple of things here in Atlanta to kind of keep the lights on, and they didn't necessarily work out. They were just, they just didn't work out. There's a company called The Core that we started. I started with a brother who is the first VC, Black VC in New York. Another brother, who used to be Will Smith's, chief operating officer. Another brother who was a big time entrepreneur in Atlanta. And the four of us came together and started something, and it didn't work out. And so at that time I said, okay, maybe I'm not yet there. I need to go back to corporate. So as I was about to start looking, somebody introduced me to a former anchor from CNN International. And I knew who she was. Her name was Zane Vergie. And this lady was looking for some consultants. She was trying to figure out how to get product strategy for Africa on this business that she was thinking about. It was about video and journalism. And so I said, okay, screw it. I'll talk to her. And we talked, and I promise you, I'm not lying. I talked to her. Let's say the conversation started at 10 o'clock. By 12 o'clock, we had essentially started Akoma. That's how it happened. We started talking. She is Kenyan. I'm Nigerian. And I use that broadly, right? But, she's East Coast. I'm West Coast. We're looking at Africa. We share the same passions. She used to be at CNN. She left because of the same reasons. She was trying to do Africa. Nobody was interested in really truly helping her out. So she left to try and do it on her own. And that's how we came about. We had this shared frustration that, man, that continent is just getting rocked. Ebola, it made it seem like Africa was infested. This one country that was infested by Ebola. And that's all people knew about the continent. Meanwhile, I'll go back home and I'll see people have you ever been to a Nigerian wedding? Have you ever been to a freaking Nigerian wedding? Right? Have you, it's an amazing thing.
You guys invented making it rain.
Oh, we call it spring. We call it spring.
Not only do we invent it, we keep reinventing it every day, right? So, we just figured, hey, you know what? We could do this. There's so many people, so many, creators and so many individuals and organizations that have a lot of really cool things that they're doing, and they want to share it with the world. And that's how we came up with Akoma.
I love when I was reading this reading up about it, and I love this the way you talked about your ideal user, someone who's like engaged with the community, someone who's like between like 18 and 54, but like they have like opinions, and they want to share their thoughts, but like they don't necessarily want to, become a professional blogger,
Right.
or have their own website or whatnot. So, but they want to like just disseminate and get engaged within the community about what's happening, within their world. And so I empathize with that completely, because we have stuff like Twitter here in the States and stuff like that, but it's not tailored to, or like Medium, but it's not tailored to that African diaspora experience. And I'm sure, I'm just thinking about, if I would use it, I'll just be scrolling down, just learning about the different facets that are happening within the African continent. So what's the exciting insights that you're starting to learn from working within the platform and developing out solutions for your users today?
Yeah, so I'm a product guy, Ahmad. You know this, right? So as I like to say,
one of the best.
A product guy is always, you're always asking questions. You're curious, right? You're not, there's no such thing as, oh, we got it, we figured it out. But, just as you figured it out, something else is breaking. So myself and Zane, we started off with, hey, we're going to build this thing where anybody who has something to say, has a story to tell, be it video, can use this platform. Okay. There's more to it though. There's more to this because, well, first things first, we got to build a business, right? We're not doing this as a hobby. We have a grand vision, and our vision is to really, astonish the world, delight the world with the storytelling, but also the storytellers of Africa, right? We are looking to make sure that we provide both professional and amateur creators the opportunity to showcase their stuff. And so what we're finding is, I was in Lagos, Nigeria. I was there for Social Media Week Lagos early this month. And, we saw a lot of smart creators. And every time we told them about Akoma, it was very clear. They would say, man, we need this, right? But we don't just need a platform. We need all kinds of, tools to take us to the next level. We need all kinds of opportunities, right? We need to get paid, right? So you can't make a living off of something if you're not getting paid. We just need to be given, a level field so that we can compete. So what we're finding is our users are not just, Toye and, Ahmad and Chidi. Our users are that blogger, right, who is very smart, dropping pearls all the time, but she can barely break even on her audience, right? She's not getting the kind of pickup that she deserves. And so we're starting to see where the content creator, right, is becoming very critical to our business, where, the opportunity to give the content creator the tools to tell really great stories, right? And when we say great stories, Ahmad, it's not just about, here's some fictional content or even non-fictional content. It's really about branded content too, right? Businesses tell stories. I mean, some of the best stories being told on the Western side are told by businesses, and they're very willing to pay folks who can help them tell those stories. And so that's where we're starting to see opportunities for Akoma, and that's where we're starting to put some energy and attention to.
Yeah, that's actually was really kind of going into my next question was, with you being based in Atlanta, is your co-founder also based in Atlanta?
She's in New York.
Okay, so obviously, and then you're also trying to curate content originally for people that are within the diaspora, particularly within Africa. So, how have you guys gone about, doing just that?
Yeah, listen, 10 years ago, this would probably be very difficult, right? You got to probably move, probably got to move to either Lagos or Nairobi or Johannesburg. Maybe, you could venture to another city. But what's happened is, what we've seen is, the way the connectivity today has evolved, man, you could run a company virtually. And you can run a company virtually that is addressing a different, continent or a different market. So what has happened is, my family is here. And when I say my family, I mean my immediate family. But, my parents are in Nigeria. Zane's parents are in Nairobi. Most of our friends are scattered all over Africa. And so what we've seen is it's been easy for us to use kind of, teleconferencing and video conferencing and Slack and Trello and all kinds of, our development team is in India, right? And so it's been amazing to see how efficient and effective we've been able to do this by, being in different locations. Now, I will say this is very important for me to say. You got to be on ground, though. You got to have your on ground folks. You got to be able to go visit as often as possible. They need to see you. They need to feel you. Because at the end of the day, if you're kind of doing this thing from afar, you might as well be, another American that's just trying to tell them what to do, right? And so, we've done a good job of integrating, of using technology to kind of manage things, but we are on the ground as often as possible. I'm in Nairobi next week, right? We're graduating 25 fellows who are part of what we call Amplify. Amplify is a fellowship program that we've put together for creators, right? And so we've been with them for 6 months and we're about to graduate them. I've met them all. I was hanging out with the Nigerian fellows earlier this month. We were with the Rwandan fellows late last year. Same thing with the Kenyan fellows. And we're going to see them again, next week. So, there's some travel involved, but man, it's almost like I know these people because we have been talking to them. We interact with them on a very regular basis through all these tools that we have available to us today.
Man, you're running a global organization right now.
Essentially.
And it's easy. Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted, you mentioned one thing that I wanted to dig into a little bit was your fellowship program that you created through Akoma. You have your MBA, like many MBAs, you think about strategy and the value that it's going to, like an opportunity will lend itself to the company. So from that strategic perspective, what was the strategic approach with Amplify Fellowship Program for Akoma? How did you see that tailoring into your vision for the next steps to grow Akoma?
Well, think about this, right? So we talked about content creators, right? And content creators are hustlers, right? You guys are content creators. This podcast is a content creators. This is where content creators are kicking butt today. Is with podcasts, right? So you understand there's a hustle involved. You guys are trying to build a media empire through your podcast. And so, folks are in Africa are just looking for the same opportunities. And so strategically, Zane and I, we thought that there had to be a way for us to not only want to, hey, we're going to hire you and, you're going to create content for us and then we'll pay you and then, we'll have a relationship. We just thought that, there's an opportunity for us to create world-class content creators and not just create them, but build a community, right? And when I say create, these are folks who are working it. So, let me explain. The fellows are not students, right? These are working people. These are folks who are already doing their craft. And what we felt was we could, provide, 6 months of a creative ecosphere where they could now do some things and we can help them understand what branded content look like and developing their voices and understanding the technology tools they needed to use and understanding how to do stories as a service, right? And become, income earners as creators. And so that's what we did is we said, okay, you know what? Instead of this being what we call, this is not a revenue generating part of our business. This is something that we actually look at it as our nonprofit side of things, where we've partnered with a foundation, in this case, MasterCard Foundation, and they gave us money. And we went out there and we found 25 fellows, 10 in Nigeria, 10 in Kenya, 5 in Rwanda. And we paid them $500 each a month. And we rocked and rolled with them. We got into it. What does content look like? Why is Africa such a vibrant place for content? We made sure that every week they were writing stories or taking photos or doing videos that they put on Akoma. You got to build your muscle. That's the one thing that creativity requires. You know, people think Michael became this great star because he's just talented. No, that dude was one of the hardest working human beings ever, right? He would dance his butt off. He would practice. And that's what we try to do with these folks, is to say, look, you know, every week you got to produce something. And, you know, they're doing a project right now that they're going to present next week. So strategically, our goal was, you know what, this is one way for us to build that community, right? You know, we talk about this community of creators in Africa. Well, what better way to start that than by bringing them together under this Amplified Fellowship, incentivize them financially, but also from an opportunity to do some really incredible stuff. And so that's where Amplify showed up. And man, I'll tell you, it's one of the best things that I've ever done, especially now that they're graduating. I can't wait to see them next week because they've come a long way, and it's a special thing.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, it's definitely special in the sense that, you know, I think a lot of times, you know, all people need is opportunity and resources. And, you know, the fact that you guys are really, you know, providing them not only with opportunity and a platform, but also the resources to create the content. I think that's so awesome. You know, I think I'm very sure that our listeners, and I'm not gonna lie myself, I'm definitely curious on, you know, how the MasterCard partnership came about. I mean, that's, you know, I think it's a very clear, you know, win-win on both sides. But can you kind of talk to about, you know, how that partnership came about?
Yeah. So let me come at it from two directions. So first is, I can't imagine doing Akoma without Zane. Okay. And let me explain. Zane is probably one of the best things that's happened to me as a professional. You know, this woman is driven. She is sharp. You know, she is so focused and, you know, such a quick learner, right? In the 2 years that we've been together, she is so tech savvy today. You know, it's like night and day from when I met her to where she is today. She's a sponge, right? And the other superpower that she brings to the table is that she knows all kinds of people. I mean, there are folks that I've met or talked to, and I would leave the meeting and say, I can't believe that I just talked to this person, you know? And so I say that because she's the one that was able to say, okay, look, if we're going to do this, right, you know, between the two of us, we're bootstrapping the company, but we can't afford to put together the kind of cash where you're paying 25 people $500 a month, in addition to other things and traveling and all that stuff. So, you know, we were able to start looking at foundations that will support what we're trying to do. Okay. And you have to understand, you know, you need to find foundations that have a mission that's aligned with yours. And the MasterCard Foundation, man, you should see the work they're doing in Africa. They're all about careers, they're all about jobs, about, you know, making sure that the youth in Africa, the young, that the continent is given the support that it needs to make itself heard and known. And so we made the pitch to a MasterCard Foundation. They gave us a hard time because that's what they're supposed to do. They had to put us through the grinder. But man, we came out very successful at the end. They are very interested in opportunities for folks to get gigs, for folks to have opportunities to create. And that's their number one mission. And we were able to meet them and make it happen.
All of this movement that you've been having, or progression, I should say, it's been leveraged through having a quality team. And just having a team surrounded to execute on those action items. So our listeners are, you know, many of them are in that, you know, early stage, you know, trying to get out that idea stage and build their teams. You establish a great co-founder who's influential and just aligned with your vision, and then also built a team around that. What is your practical tips or insights that you can share about finding a good co-founder and building a team to support your vision? Man,
you guys got it. You guys have to vibe. Okay, there is a vibe that the two of you should have, where it's essentially almost like it's essentially a marriage, right? You have to vibe, because look, and the one thing you can't allow yourself to do is to get caught up in this person has to be like me, or this person has to have the same skill sets as me. Zane and I are two different beasts. I'm the left side, she's the right side, or she's the left side, I'm the right side. Whichever one you want to say, that's how we operate this business. Yin and yang, whatever you want to say. That's the way it's worked out for us. And we argue viciously sometimes, right? but it's never personal. You understand what I'm saying? The two of us have the same goals for this business. And so because of that, we know that when we're arguing, we're not arguing to beat the other person down. We're arguing because the two of us are looking for that common ground that then allows us to push forward and say, okay, boom, we've landed on this. Now let's go make it happen, right? So when you have a co-founder, you guys have to be aligned on your mission. You have to be aligned on the end goal, what you're trying to accomplish. Again, if you're trying to be friends with this person, where, okay, you know what, I'm just going to let you say whatever you said and I'll go with that. Oh, the business is done, right? You need somebody that is just as passionate as you, to the extent that they will come at you and you'll come at them. But then you guys will know that at some point you will reach a common place and you can move forward. And then when you're looking at other folks, we have a young lady who's part of the team, has been with us from the get-go. And she is gangster too, right? She is all about the mission and she sees it and she is passionate. And so that's what you're looking for. We've had people who have come through and, we thought they were really great. In some cases, they just weren't there, right? They just didn't have the energy. They weren't as invested in the mission. Sometimes this is a money thing. I would say if you're an entrepreneur, I tell you, you want to see the folks who will hang out even when they're not getting the kind of money they could get somewhere else. That is a big lesson for me, right? Because there are folks who, oh my God, Chidi, what you're doing is incredible. I want to come join. I want to do this. I want to do that. And when the time comes, ultimately, the pressures of the day-to-day start to get to them. And I understand that. But, there are folks who are with us and they've been with us in the gutter. They've been hanging tough with us. And I think that sooner or later they'll be rewarded, because we're building something here that's special. And I think that you want to make sure that folks who are with you are in there. They are in there. They're going to take the fire with you. They're going to kind of huddle with you when things are not going well, and they'll enjoy the fruits when things start to really play out.
Me and Toye can definitely attest to our passions making concessions on a decision. But I have a follow-up question from you used the word. I remember you used the word a lot within the General Assembly class I attended of yours, and you brought it up again here, which is your superpower.
Yeah.
And I was hoping you could break that down for our listeners and I was wondering, did you always know what your superpower was when it came to developing businesses and startups?
Yeah, if you ask me what my superpower is, I couldn't really articulate it. I don't have laser eyesight, or I can't fly, or any of that crap, although I've tried on a couple of occasions. But I will tell you that I've always felt very comfortable, sitting at the intersection of that technology and people and entertainment. I've always felt like when you put me at that intersection, I'm very comfortable and I can do stuff, right? I understand intuitively how to solve problems, and being at that intersection, solving problems for the media and entertainment industry using technology was always something I felt very comfortable in, very confident about. So that superpower thing is key. You got to know what you're good at, right? Be it, so for instance, I like to use coding as a great example. There's some folks who are just out there. Everybody wants to code. So everybody's taking a class. I'm going to code and I'm going to get that 6-figure salary. That's not the case. The truth of the matter is some of the best coders, the superhero or super villain, I'll also say that super villain coders, they're good at that because they solve problems using code. You understand what I'm saying? Mark Zuckerberg, his superpower is that it's not necessarily that he is this credible businessman that knew that, social media was going to blow up. It's just more that his superpower was he understood how to use code to solve a very fundamental problem that he had identified. And that is a key. That is a key. Mine is, hey, I am good at solving problems, right? I am very, very good at solving problems, thinking about problems and solving them. And I'm doing that in an environment that is very exciting in the technology, in the media, in the entertainment, communications world. And so for people, right now, if you haven't had the opportunity to do the assessment, what are you good at? What's do a SWOT analysis. Ahmad, you can remember I talked about SWOT analysis in class, right?
Indeed. Right.
Do a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And what opportunities and threats do those, strengths and weaknesses, give you? That way you understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, so that when you have a co-founder or if you're putting a team together, then at least you know somebody who's going to buttress your weaknesses and make sure that, it alleviates the threats that are coming out against you and opens up opportunities for you, right? So, it's hard sometimes. I promise you, go ask somebody right now, what's your superpower? They'll be looking at you like, what? I can dance, right? No, that's not what I'm asking you.
That's pretty funny. Like me and Amal were literally just earlier talking about doing a Myers-Briggs assessment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like literally. And it seems like you and your co-founder really, have a really good balance between, how you guys operate the business and manage the business. So I'm kind of curious, obviously, even with, as you continue to grow the business, it's as a team that it is distributed. So I'm guessing you're even, dealing with different time zones and all that fun stuff that come along with that. How do you balance, running this global business, right? This global enterprise, with just life?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm not even going to pretend. I'm not one of those people. I don't know if you guys are into movies. I'm into movies, right? You always see a villain or even a main character say something like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? And I've never bought into that. I'm not one of those folks who is like, man, I got to work myself into the ground, and then, when I get successful, then I'll chill. And even then, I'll still keep working my ass off. No. I've always been about making sure that I give myself time. And I say myself, okay? Whatever that means, I give myself time to detox, to debrief, decompress. It's very likely that you'll see me go see a movie by myself, or during the day, I'll take an hour, go have lunch by myself. My family, my girls, I have, 3 wonderful girls. I like to sit and watch Star Trek Voyager or Star Trek Next Generation with them. I play video games, right? What I do is I make sure that I chill as hard as I work, right? And that has allowed me to stay on top of it, okay? There's, as you said, you got the Indians, they're about, 9-10 hours ahead of us. You got the Rwandans who are, 7 hours ahead of us. The Nigerians are 5 hours ahead of us. The Kenyans are, so it's all over the place. And so, it's important for me to be able to chill, right? I'm home 5 o'clock to hang out with my family, right? I hang out with me and my wife, try to chill as much as we can, even when Zane and I are working. So you guys should have seen us in Lagos. We were working during the day. I mean, the folks at the hotel are like, man, these guys are crazy. But in the evening, oh yeah, we went out, got ourselves, some food, some drinks, and chilled out. So it's important to do that. It is so important. I don't necessarily have a lot of respect for folks who just go crazy and drive themselves into the wall and neglect their families and neglect themselves, don't work out. I'm not saying go become crazy, but, I bike, on Saturdays, I just hop on my road bike, put on my helmet, gear up looking like Flash, and I'm out there and I do 40, 50 miles. It's just a way. Do you know how many strategic decisions you can make on a 40, 50 mile road bike when you're going and coming back? The conversations you have with yourself, some of the clarity that you have. Come on now. So that's me just talking about, how I try to keep things kosher for me.
You kind of like brought us into our final section of the show. We like to call this the dropping gems section, where it's kind of like, like rapid fire questions. Hopefully it provides, some key tools and tips that our listeners can take away and apply to their entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into the first question, because we're already in that vibe and the motion with some of these practical tips. And that first question is, What top 3 tools would you have recommended to yourself when you first started working on the idea?
Let me just be clear. Slack is number one. Again, if you're running a distributed team, I can't imagine how you do it without some kind of a communication system that is real time. And Slack has been a godsend. Okay, so that's number one. Of course, I would say another tool is Trello. And I say Trello. Trello is a project. Well, it's not a. I mean, people say it's a project management tool, but I see it as just as an organizational tool, right? And so, you can do project management, you can plan your own life, you can do all kinds of things. And so Trello has been critical because that's the way me and the development team have essentially managed our backlog of stuff. So Slack, Trello, and then the third would be, I would say for Zane and I, video conferencing, right? And I know this is not the most exciting stuff, but man, we got to see each other every now and then. Yeah, we're not in the same town, but we got to see each other. We got to have the facial expressions. We should, be able to point. I'm a very energetic and very. I'm Nigerian, so I talk with my hands, right? And so she needs to see that, and I need to see her. So I would say Zoom for video conferencing, Slack for managing the teams, and Trello for project management.
So Chidi, so our next question, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, and maybe you might say the same thing, maybe you might point out another thing, but the next question is, what do you do to keep yourself sane?
All right, let me rapid fire that. The first one I will say is exercise, right? So I kickbox, and I'm a bike rider. So those are my 2 activities. Quite honestly, I don't do anything else. I'm being very honest. I don't lift weights. I don't do any of that stuff. I just do kickboxing, which has some really cool things in there, but it's kickboxing and biking. So that's exercise. Number 2, video games. Dude, if you're not video gaming, get into video gaming. If you're a woman, please don't get into this, video games are for geeks. No, get into video games and not on your phone. Don't do that Mafia Wars crap. Get a console, get a PC, and get into some immersive, first person type strategy games. I would hire anybody that is into gaming because there's a lot to learn. You're a problem solver, right? And you're the kind that is also very, fastidious about solving problems. So exercise, video games, and then I love, I'm a big entertainment guy. So I do watch a lot of TV. I do. I'm a Netflix guy. I'm a Hulu guy. And so I like to watch innovative TV. So that's how I kind of keep my mind sane, is to escape through those 3 things.
Yeah, I'm not a gamer, but you're making me feel bad because I'm not one now.
You better become a gamer. I'll come find you. I'll come.
Well, I'm going to move on to the next question so you don't have to jump over there. What is your favorite business book?
Yeah, this is a good one. I've read a lot of them, but Creativity Inc. is the one that I'll recommend to folks because we all know about Pixar. Pixar is a company that is a hit-making machine. They don't make crappy products. Everything they do is a hit. From Toy Story to the last movie, I can't remember what the last movie was, but they just had another big one, right? That's all they do is they make hits. And so Creativity Inc. is from the president and chief operating officer of Pixar. And he talks about how they do things, right? How they come up with product and how they work as a team, okay? And so the book talks about, candor, right? That's what they do. Is they talk to each other with candor. No agendas. They're just candid, right? They're not critical. They don't do critiques. They just are candid about stuff. So Creativity Inc. is the book I would recommend to everybody to read. You'll see Pixar and you'll see a hit-making product company do their thing. So that's a book I'll recommend.
I'm definitely going to go and pick that up for sure. That sounds like a very interesting read. So our last question, what do you not want an app to replace?
You know what? I'll tell you that actually this is easy for me. I don't want an app to replace human interaction. Okay? There's this thing about machine language AI, bots. You're starting to see people start to get into this thing about talking to machines. There are movies that have been done about this, Ex Machina and Her. And I just don't want to get to a place where for me to talk to my wife or for me to talk to Ahmad or Toya, I got to use my app, right, to talk to them. Hey, Siri, could you tell Ahmad that, I don't want to talk to him, right? No. Human interaction is the one thing that we need to keep as humans. And I'm telling you, we are very close to getting rid of that stuff, because the way we get in an elevator, watch everybody look at their phone. You get into a train in New York City, everybody's looking at their phone. You get on a plane, everybody's putting on their headphones. I mean, nobody wants to talk to each other. And, Silicon Valley and the techies are saying, okay, fine. If you don't want to talk to each other, we'll create these machines. Shoot, people don't even want to drive anymore. We're talking about autonomous vehicles. And this is a techie. I'm a techie, right? So it's almost counterintuitive. But I just hope that we don't get to a place where devices are doing all the talking for us.
I feel you. I can totally agree that human interaction is very important. Well, yeah, man. Like we are at the that's the question that we end the show on. But we don't want to close out the show without giving you the opportunity to share how our listeners can connect with you to learn more about Akoma and just stay up to date with the progress for the company.
Yeah, man. Listen, my name is Chidi, Chidi. Last name is A-F as in Frank, U-L-E-Z as in zebra, I. I am, easy to find on the internet. I am on Twitter, first initial, last name. And I'm on LinkedIn. So please, hit me off. I would love to communicate with anybody who wants to. If it's that important, if it's critical, hey, hit off the Ahmad and Toya. They know where to find me, right? But I am definitely looking forward to continue the conversation whenever we have the opportunity.
Awesome. Chidi, thank you so much for joining us. This was so many great gems, and we're finally touching the continent, and that was definitely one of my goals when I talked to Ahmad about creating this startup. Really, starting to not only think about companies that are being built here in the U.S., but let's take it international. Let's look at what's being built over in Africa as well.
Oh yeah, there's so many stories. So I'm looking forward to you guys telling some of those.
Well, yeah. Stay tuned. That's it. Yeah. So yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.